Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nihilist Wrestling. I am your host, Ash Manson, and this is a new podcast video series I have started just to give me an outlet to talk about professional wrestling. This is for me, but if other people end up liking it and want to come along with me on this ride, I will be as interactive as possible. But really, I started this show so I could get on camera and talk about something that I am very, very passionate about, and that is pro wrestling. The reason I'm calling it nihilist wrestling, it is because I am a nihilist, and no, that doesn't mean that I feel like life is meaningless, so what's the point in trying, or everything sucks, so fuck everything. That is not what nihilism means. I'm kind of reclaiming the term. Nihilism is just the rejection of the idea that life has an objective meaning. So the reason that I'm calling my podcast Nihilist Wrestling is, as a nihilist, I think life is random chaos. My disposition is not exactly sunny. But, it's not to say that I'm like an unhappy person or anything. It's just my overall worldview, not so great. But there are a couple things in life that keep me going. One is definitely, the most important, of course, is my beautiful wife, my 3 kitties, Jasmine, Zoe, and Bellatrix, my friends, my family, but the 2 main passions that keep me going are heavy metal and professional wrestling. I am the lead singer in a heavy metal band. I have been doing so since I was 13 years old. That's actually my voice you're hearing on the intro. I love it with everything in me. I have a little bit of an abusive relationship with heavy metal, though, I gotta say. But professional wrestling, it's something I'm content not being an active participant in. I wrestled very briefly, I think from around 2010 to 2011 or something like that. My ring name is Ash Manson, that's why I go by it here on this podcast. Back then I had some friends that had some formal training, and they trained me up to the best of my ability, and I'm very happy to have done it, but I never really wanted to be a professional wrestler. It's always something I've been totally content being a fan of, but I am such a fan that I almost feel like I have to do something with my fandom. So that's a big reason as to why I am here right now. And we're going to talk about a few things today. I'm not going to get into everything. I want to keep this relatively short, but there is definitely a reason I wanted to get this out by today, because of what is happening tomorrow, and we will get into that right now. It's Sting! You can see it on my t-shirt. That's the main thing happening here in professional wrestling, at least as far as I'm concerned. Tomorrow is Sting's retirement match, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm super emotional about it. And I'm not sure exactly what it is. Maybe it's just kind of one of the last vestiges of my childhood being put to rest. But an interesting fact here, you can see that NW1 World Championship in my background there. I wasn't a fan of Sting growing up. And here's what I mean by that. I started watching wrestling in 1996. I was born in 86, so I'm 10 years old at this point. And what really got me into wrestling more than anything was the NWO. I am NWO for life. Something about the NWO, and I tell this story to people, and people think it's a little bit nuts, but I mean it sincerely. The NWO is one of the main reasons I got into heavy metal. And what I mean by that is, I am 10 years old, right? And there's not much representation for anything dark or alternative or anything, on any of the media that I'm exposed to at that point. I knew who Hulk Hogan was, of course. He was unavoidable. He's the biggest name in pro wrestling history. I don't think that's disputable. when I was just channel surfing and I saw Hulk Hogan dressed in black and breaking all the rules and beating people up, and it just kind of it's just the fact that that resonated with me so much. It kind of exposed me to the idea that I might be into alternative forms of entertainment, darker forms of entertainment, if you will. Like the fact that I sympathized so much with the heel kind of made me think like, am I a bad guy? Do I like the dark shit? And then when I started hearing, a few years later, new metal really became a thing with like Korn and Limp Bizkit and Slipknot and all that. And I don't know, in a way, the fact that I liked the bad guys in wrestling kind of like made it more the bad guys in music a little bit more palatable to me. But we'll move on because that's not what I'm here to talk about. But we'll definitely on this podcast I'll talk about how wrestling intersects with cultures, and we might delve into other issues a little bit. But for now I want to talk about Sting. Sting was another dark guy, right? By the time I'm watching, he's, I think, the Crow gimmick, I can't remember if that started in 1996 or 1997. But anyway, he was kind of a darker guy, but he was a good guy. And that was interesting for 10-year-old me to reconcile. But anyway, I didn't like Sting because he was against the NWO. And, as an adult, for example, I love Drew McIntyre because he does compelling character work and, he's just easy to relate to, and you can, he makes a convincing case for everything that he does, and just, I respect brilliant character work regardless of who the character is. And we'll get into Drew McIntyre in the future for sure, but all this to say that the reason I'm mentioning it is because back then, if you're against the NWO, I don't like you. But I always kind of liked Sting, I had to kind of lie to myself, no, I don't like him. He's against my guys. But just something about Sting, I enjoyed every time that he was on my television screen. And when he joined the NWO Wolfpack, I was loyal to the black and white. I would follow Hulk Hogan because he's really the first guy that got me into wrestling. I would follow him, with whatever he did. So when the NWO split into the black and white and the Wolfpack, I was a black and white guy. So yeah, I still wasn't crazy about Sting. I wanted him to lose. I wanted NWO Hollywood to win everything. And then when the NWO got back together for the black, white, and red, the Elite and the B Team, by then I think Sting was injured. And when he came back, he was back to his white face paint and all that. So Sting did a whole bunch of great things throughout his career, long before I started watching wrestling. But where my time with Sting ended, at least during that time period, is when WCW closed down and Sting basically faded off into the darkness for a couple years. He made some appearances with TNA, before TNA had regular television, but it wasn't until Final Resolution, I can't remember if it was 05 or 06, he came back to TNA, and that was my first time to fully appreciate Sting in without being tainted by the childish. You're not against my crew, Now I'm riding with you. He re-debuted alongside Christian Cage, or a tag team match, or the pay-per-view. He faked like he was going to retire. Sting had a tremendous run in TNA. I got to see him live at the Impact Zone at least once. I think that was the first time I saw Sting was in TNA. And the Joker character, who can forget about that? That was honestly I think Sting's best character, of course, was the Dark Crow version, like, especially before he talked, when he just appeared in the rafters and didn't say a whole lot and all that. But I don't know, maybe if you asked me what my favorite version of Sting was, it was late in his TNA career when he was the Joker. It is just like the way that Sting could reinvent himself so late in his career, kind of like Chris Jericho is constantly doing. I was so impressed by that. And when he left TNA, Sting and AJ Styles left at around the same time. That's about the time that I stopped watching TNA, because a large part of me was there for Sting, just to, properly be a fan of such. So when he came back to WWE, of course, I was thrilled. He already did a commercial because he was appearing in a 2K video game. And I was very happy to see him, but to see the way that WWE utilized Sting at that time, it was so upsetting. They made him into a big deal, right? But I just don't feel like when Sting is on your program, it's special. And Sting just kind of seemed like a guy that was there in WWE, and ultimately he ended up being there to put over Triple H and Seth Rollins, and we didn't get our match with The Undertaker that we all wanted. And I'm happy that the WWE run happened, but the fact that he retired in his Hall of Fame speech for WWE, it just kind of seemed like going out with a whisper, and it didn't sit well with me, but I was appreciative to have seen Sting again. Now in 2020, and winter is coming for AEW, the idea that Sting could possibly come back wasn't even on my radar. Like, I don't think I was watching the show live. I think I watched it on DVR, so it was spoiled to me, like scrolling on Facebook, that Sting had returned to wrestling in AEW, and I'm like, what? I have to see this. So I remember as soon as I could, I fired up my DVR and I watched him come back, and I watched the snow fill up the arena, and that I don't think that's ever been a part of Sting's presentation anytime in the past, but it was just so cool, and just to see him again, and that instantly made me wonder, like, what's he going to do? Like, I had heard him say that his neck was fine. I know he had a neck injury that forced him to retire the first time, but the idea that he could wrestle didn't even really cross my mind so much at that point. He's about 60 years old. I'm not sure that I even really was jonesing to see him wrestle necessarily. But then he took a powerbomb one day. I think it was Brian Cage that powerbombed him. And I'm just like, ooh. We're actually gonna see Sting do some stuff. I know he had mentioned in the interview that maybe he's going to do cinematic matches, and at that point the Undertaker's Boneyard match had already happened at WrestleMania, and I was totally here for it. Things the Broken Universe and Matt Hardy and the Wyatt family and all that. They really bent the idea of what could happen on pro wrestling television. So I was all about the idea of Sting having a cinematic match, and his first match was with Darby against members of Team Taz. It was Brian Cage and I think Ricky Starks. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was phenomenal. And the fact that he continued to wrestle after that, I mean, I thought that would be the extent of it. AEW would be honoring Sting's legacy by letting him do those cinematic matches. But Darby Allin was the one that pushed Sting, that let him know that he could do this. He could step back in the ring and he could, have actual matches. And he just, for those 3 to 4 years he was in AEW, he just threw caution to the wind. He was jumping off shit. I was there at Double or Nothing 2021, I think, when he when he jumped in Jacksonville, when he jumped off the poker chips and all that. He took off his shirt for the first time, and he was still in pretty good shape, and he just jumped off the poker chips onto a couple of guys, and I was totally losing my shit at that point. And the fact that Sting has just been he's been used the right way in AEW. Like, they present him as a star, but they're not like mortgaging their future by making so much of their show about Sting. Like, Sting has done wonders to elevate other people, and nobody has beaten him, but just being involved in a program with Sting, like, elevates their profile. Darby Allin has looked incredible this entire time that he's been tagging with Sting. Like, I can't say enough good things about his time in AEW, and I really would like to thank Tony Khan for, like, putting the proper respect on Sting's name. Like, it regardless of what happens at Revolution here tomorrow. Like, he could honestly, like, take 2 steps and injure himself, and they have to end the match, like, right away. I mean, God forbid that happen, but I'm just saying, hypothetically, it could be a train wreck, and I still could not have possibly asked for a better run to, like, you know, just put an exclamation point at the end of a legendary career. I'm so thankful to Tony Khan and AEW. I'm saying it again just because I can't say enough good things about the presentation of Sting. And right now, he's 64 years old. He turns 65 like later this month, and still I'm wanting more. Like, it seems like he has gas in his tank still. He could still go out there for a couple years more, and in the capacity that he's been featured in tag team matches. I know he doesn't really want to do singles matches, and he probably has a pretty good reason for that. But the way that he's been used, the way he's been featured, like, I want more. I'm sad. I'm not ready to watch him go. And that's, again, a testament to the man, Steve Borden, Sting. Everyone in the locker room has nothing but the greatest things to say about him. Like, testament to Sting, testament to AEW. I can't wait to see it. I might get a little something in my eyes during that match, if you know what I'm saying. It's gonna be hard to keep it together, but I'm really looking forward to Revolution. So, speaking of Revolution, I'm gonna talk about Swerve Strickland for a bit. We have that triple threat match between Hangman Page, the AEW champion Samoa Joe, and Swerve Strickland. That program has been incredible. In a weird way, it seems like Samoa Joe is the least significant part of that program, but that's not a criticism. That's just a testament to how well the challengers have been doing. Hangman and Swerve's program has been epic. Hangman's been eating the L's in the program, but I think that's perfectly fine because Swerve needs those wins more to elevate him, whereas Hangman is an established commodity, former AEW World Champion. It looked like Swerve had him beat in that third match too, but then the time limit expired, which I thought was a brilliant way to keep that going and make that match here a triple threat match, incorporating all the history between Hangman and Swerve, into this world title match. I firmly believe that it is Swerve Strickland's time. My only real concern is that Revolution is so clearly about Sting that I kind of worry that if this is the night that Swerve gets his well-deserved AEW World Championship win, that it might take a little bit of the shine off of that, but it's not a bad thing. Getting too much of a good thing on one show, especially since AEW isn't running pay-per-views every month, it's definitely not a bad thing. I just really want to see Swerve go to the moon. I've been a big fan of Swerve for many years. I saw him for the first time. I can't remember if it was 2015 or 16, but it was at Evolve in Tampa, Florida. And Rich Swann, who was my favorite wrestler on the indies at the time, he said that he wanted to set up a system where an established veteran of Evolve can endorse a newcomer and give them a shot. And he endorsed Swerve Strickland, and I can't even remember who Swerve faced, but I remember seeing him, and I was just like, this man is going to be a star. I just knew it right then and there. And I really enjoyed his work in Lucha Underground as Killshot. Also, like, I wasn't watching NXT at the time that Hit Row was there, but anytime I went out of my way to watch some of his matches when he was North American Champion. I loved Hit Row. I think that was a wasted opportunity on WWE's part. I thought Top Dollar has a lot of personality. Ashante might still, I love this tag team that he's got with Cedric Alexander. I haven't seen them work yet, but those vignettes are really cool. Like, I thought B-Fab really added to the presentation. I was really behind Hit Row. I was excited when I heard they were getting called up, and then they released B-Fab right away, and then they released the rest of them, and that was just really unfortunate. But I watched back the introduction to Hit Row and just listening to Swerve speak and all that, and again, I just knew he was a star. Maybe people in WWE didn't see it that way, but I was there at Revolution in Orlando when Tony Khan introduced Swerve. I was so excited because I'm like, that was my guy. I just, that I saw, and I just knew, like, he was going to be the guy, like, either main eventing WrestleMania, I guess that wasn't to be, or maybe headlining Wembley Stadium, which that could very much still happen. Like, I've been riding with Swerve for a while, and I love the way that, like, so much detail goes into his character. He's really cerebral. He really thinks out, like, everything he does. Like, he's got a vicious side to him, but you listen to him talk in interviews, he's like, sometimes I just go out there and wrestle a match and go to the back. He's like, that sadistic part only comes out when his opponent deserves it. Like, you see it when he goes against Hangman. He wasn't, like, showing up at people's homes when he was in the Continental Classic, and he was just having wrestling matches. Like, everything that he does is very intentional. It makes a lot of sense. He's got like, his character, I think, has a wide appeal, like, across, like, different demographics, different kinds of fans. Like, I'm very into heavy metal and horror, and Swerve's into that, and I think he's a perfect representation of all of that. He's also a rapper, and he appeals to, like, hip-hop culture. He strives to be the first African-American world champion in AEW, and I think he's the perfect man to do it, especially when you look back at the way that especially WWE has presented some of their black stars in the past. A lot of times they make them, like, kind of, they present them in a way that to make them a little bit more palatable to white audiences, I feel. And Swerve is just, like, he's presented, like, 100% as himself, authentically. They don't water him down. I love the way that he's presented on television. I don't even gotta tell you about how great he is in the ring. Like, Swerve is ready to go, and I'm going to be watching that pay-per-view, and I'm going to hope that they throw the title on Swerve. But if they don't, I'm not all that worried about it, because I think it's going to happen. And if they don't pull the trigger on Swerve winning the AEW World Championship right now, I don't believe it's because they're not going to do it. I'm just going to assume that they feel that it's not the right time, maybe because of what I was talking about earlier. Like, you don't want to take any of the shine off of Swerve in a pay-per-view that's mostly about Sting. So I totally understand, like, regardless of the outcome, I am really looking forward to Samoa Joe and Hangman Page. I know I've kind of grazed past Samoa Joe and Hangman Page, but Hangman is fucking killing it. Like, he is so kind of like Drew McIntyre in a way. Like, he's just so much, like, he was relatable as a good guy, right? Because, one of his catchphrases or a line on one of his shirts was "anxious millennial cowboy," and you can kind of relate to that. A lot of us that deal with anxiety and all that, and just kind of like the awkward good guy that you can't help but get behind, and his relationship with the Dark Order that also like made him very likable, because who didn't love the Dark Order, But Hangman, with his new, he's got that creeper stash, but that kind of, adds to his heel persona. I don't know. Hangman is also killing it. And whatever happens in the title match, I hope that Hangman and Swerve isn't done, because I want to see more. As I said before, it seems like Samoa Joe is the most insignificant element of this title match. But that's not a knock on Joe. It really isn't. Samoa Joe, the fact that he is AEW World Champion adds credibility to the show. It adds credibility to the promotion that just such an established, respected man is your champion. Again, AEW has done such a tremendous job at utilizing Samoa Joe, making him look like a big deal. I thought, Joe could have had a future in commentary. He's really good at it. We all laugh about that, him WrestleMania in a poncho doing commentary, and that's the big bad Samoan submission machine in a poncho, and we all get a kick out of that, but he's really good at that, and I kind of worried that maybe that was his future, but I'm so glad that it is not. He's somewhere that, features him properly. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the match. I don't care what happens. And also in the Sting and Darby against the Young Bucks, I don't care what happens with that match either. I'm sure that Sting is going to advocate to lose the match, because the old school mentality is you go out on your back, right? You put the guy over that's going to be there tomorrow. But I'm certainly not mad if Tony makes the call to have Sting and Darby win and just relinquish the tag team titles, for him to be undefeated his entire AEW career, putting that amount of respect on him. I'm totally good with whatever. I'm just very much looking forward to the show. Alright, so last thing, there are so many things I want to talk about, but I'm new here and I don't want to overwhelm the listener. There's a lot of subjects that I'm going to cover in the future. I want to talk about how fans were booing Maxine Dupree at a house show, my thoughts about that, whether that's disrespectful, or do the fans have the right to express themselves the way they see fit. I'll talk about that in the future. I'm going to talk about Drew McIntyre and just how bad he's killing it right now. He might be one of, if not the most compelling characters in wrestling right now. I'm going to get into the Bloodline, The Rock, Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns. This video is more AEW centric, so I'm going to kind of keep it to that. The only thing that I really want to get into right now is that 20-minute promo that The Rock cut on Instagram or Twitter. I don't know where exactly he posted it, on Cody Rhodes. I'm not really going to get too far into it, but the thing I'm going to talk about is The Rock was saying pro wrestling is cool again. And I think a part of me kind of agrees with it. I mean, in the 90s, damn near everyone that I talked to was into pro wrestling. And, if you weren't, it was, kind of, weird, It was if you weren't watching Game of Thrones in the 2010s, what the hell are you doing? And then, most people fell off by the early 2000s, and if I talk about wrestling, they're like, oh yeah, I was totally into it back in the day when, Stone Cold and The Rock and DX and the NWO and all that, and I get it, because wrestling did fall off for the better part of 20 years, and there were definitely highlights in that time, but right now I think is the best that professional wrestling has been since the Attitude Era, and I do not say that lightly. I think the part, the moment where wrestling started to fall off to me was like you could maybe point to other moments, but where I started to notice the decline was the Invasion pay-per-view in 2001. The way that WWE failed to make WCW or ECW seem like a real threat. I had daydreamed about WWF versus WCW, and ECW would be a bonus, like, clash for so long, and it just seemed so anticlimactic. And once Monday Night Nitro was off the air, it just seemed that that Raw lost a lot of its urgency to be great. I mean, a lot of good things happened in the 2000s and the 2010s and all that, but I just don't think any of that compares to the Attitude Era. I think things started to get better around 2013-14 when NXT started to rise, and they signed a lot of the indie wrestlers that I appreciated so much and gave them a platform to do it on the national stage. And I just loved the old black and gold brand, and I think a lot of that was a catalyst for AEW forming, just kind of understanding that there was a market for that. And now NXT doesn't really resemble that anymore, but I still think NXT is great for an entirely different reason, and I'll get into that eventually. But the point of me mentioning this is just, I think that pro wrestling is in a really good state right now, and I don't even I watch every week. I'm a grown-ass man, I work full-time, I'm married, I sing in a band, I have other responsibilities, but I still make time every week to watch Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage. And there's so much mainstream wrestling on my plate that I barely have the capacity to watch the indies in the way that I used to, just because the mainstream promotions are meeting my needs, which honestly is great. Then that's no disrespect to the indies. I still have a deep appreciation for what they need, but wrestling is just so saturated right now, and the stuff on TV is so good that I just don't have a void that I used to. But yeah, just want to appreciate the fact The Rock being back does do a lot to make pro wrestling feel cool again, and I don't give a shit if it's cool. I've been watching this entire time. I'm a 37-year-old man that still really likes pro wrestling. That's not gonna be cool no matter what, but still, I don't care. I love it. I love the direction that it's heading, and yeah, hopefully I'm going to make many more of these videos. Hopefully, if you got this far, you enjoyed watching it, and if you did, leave some comments, and maybe we'll talk about it. I'll respond to you in the comments section, or we'll talk about it in the next video. Thank you so much for watching if you did, and I will see you later on Nihilist Wrestling.